The Quiet House. In the sleepy little town of Hollow Creek, there was a house no one talked about. People passed it without looking, avoided walking near it, and if you asked anyone about it, they'd quickly change the subject. It was old, crumbling at the edges, and had been empty for as long as anyone could remember. But one evening, Amelia and her husband, Mark, found themselves standing on its front porch. They'd just moved to town, looking for a fresh start, and were house hunting when they saw the "For Sale" sign out front. The house was huge, far more than they could normally afford. Mark was skeptical, but Amelia was captivated by its charm. The tall windows, the intricate wooden trim, the large, quiet yard. The real estate agent was quick to close the deal. Too quick. They got the keys the same day. That night, they moved in. The first sign that something was wrong came almost immediately. As Amelia unpacked in the living room, she felt a sudden drop in temperature, even though the rest of the house was warm. The fireplace, though filled with old ashes, looked as though it had been recently used. She shrugged it off, thinking it was just a draft. But the unease lingered. Later that night, they settled into their new bedroom. As they lay in bed, the wind outside picked up, howling through the trees. Amelia was just drifting off when she heard a noise, a soft creaking, like footsteps. She opened her eyes and listened. The creaking stopped. The house was old, probably just the floor settling, she told herself. She closed her eyes again. Then came a soft knock, faint but unmistakable. "Did you hear that?" she whispered to Mark, nudging him awake. "Hear what?" he mumbled, still half asleep. Another knock, louder this time. It was coming from somewhere downstairs. Amelia sat up, her heart thudding in her chest. There it is again. Mark grumbled and got out of bed, pulling on a shirt. "It's probably nothing. I'll check it out." He headed down the creaky stairs while Amelia stayed in bed, the tension tightening in her stomach. She strained to listen, her ears picking up every little noise, the rustle of the trees, the faint hum of the refrigerator. Then she heard Mark's voice, faint from downstairs. "Amelia, come here." Something about the way he said it sent a chill through her. His tone was flat, emotionless, almost mechanical. She slid out of bed, pulling on her robe. "Mark," she called, stepping into the hallway. No answer. She crept down the stairs, her bare feet cold against the wood. The house was eerily quiet. As she reached the bottom, she called again. "Mark." Still nothing. She turned the corner into the living room, and that's when she saw him. He was standing in the middle of the room, facing the wall. His back was rigid, his arms hanging unnaturally at his sides. "Mark," she whispered, her voice trembling. He didn't move. Slowly, she stepped closer. "Mark, what are you doing?" Just as she was about to touch his shoulder, he spoke in that same flat tone. "I saw someone." Amelia froze, her heart pounding. "What? Who?" "By the fireplace," he said, his voice cold and hollow. "There was a woman. She was standing right there." Amelia backed up, glancing nervously at the fireplace. There was no one there, just the old bricks and the dark, cold hearth. "Mark, there's no one here." He didn't respond. He just kept staring at the wall. Suddenly, a loud thud came from upstairs, followed by another knock, like someone pounding on a door. Amelia jumped, her eyes darting toward the staircase. "What was that?" she whispered, but Mark still didn't move. "I saw her," he repeated. "She was watching us." Amelia's skin prickled with fear. She grabbed Mark's arm, pulling him away from the wall. His skin was cold, clammy. "We need to go," she said, panic rising in her chest. "Now." They both hurried upstairs, Mark's steps slow and mechanical, as if he was in a trance. As soon as they entered the bedroom, the door slammed shut behind them with a deafening bang. Amelia gasped, rushing to open it, but it wouldn't budge. "Mark!" she screamed. But he was already sitting on the bed, staring blankly ahead. "We need to get out." Suddenly, The temperature in the room plummeted. The air grew thick, almost suffocating. A low, guttural voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once, whispering in a language Amelia didn't understand. She spun around, frantically searching the room, but there was no one there. Just the two of them, and the presence. Mark's eyes were vacant, and he spoke again, but it wasn't his voice. "She doesn't want you here." Amelia froze. Who doesn't? The one who watches. She's always watching. Before Amelia could react, the shadows in the corner of the room began to shift, growing darker and thicker, until they formed the outline of a figure. A woman, pale, with hollow eyes and a twisted smile, emerged from the darkness. Her face was contorted, her eyes black as night, and she was staring straight at Amelia. "You shouldn't have come here," the figure rasped, her voice like nails scraping against stone. Amelia screamed, grabbing Mark's arm and shaking him. "Mark, wake up!" "Please." But he didn't move. The figure took a step closer, her twisted smile widening, her eyes never leaving Amelia. "You'll never leave." Suddenly, Mark snapped out of his trance. His eyes widened in terror, and he grabbed Amelia's hand. "Run!" he shouted. The door flew open as if by unseen hands, and they bolted down the stairs, their feet barely touching the ground. The house seemed to groan around them, the walls vibrating with a low, sinister hum. As they reached the front door, it flew open, and they stumbled out into the cold night air. They didn't stop running until they were far from the house, gasping for breath, the terror still clawing at their throats. When they finally turned back, the house stood silent, its windows dark and empty, as if it had never been alive. They left Hollow Creek the next day. The house still stands there, quiet and waiting. And sometimes at night, if you walk by, you might see a pale figure standing at the window, watching.